Welcome to this episode of Countercurrents. I'm back with my friend Pepe Escobar, and we're going to look at the situation between Russia and the United States. Is it really a future of putting relations back on track, or is conflict going to be inevitable? Thanks for watching. Please hit the like and/or subscribe bar. All right, my brother, welcome back. At least we get I miss our conversations over dinner, but this will have to substitute.
Oh man, no dinner, Larry. we can't do it.
I know, impossible. So with there's a lot of mixed feelings now on this side of the ocean with respect to the incoming Trump administration.
Yes,
particularly with the comments by Mike Waltz, his national security advisor, claiming that they're hand in glove with Jake Sullivan. And then this clown, Sebastian Gorka, the Hungarian born with a British accent, who thinks he's Napoleon. And his comments the other day referring to Vladimir Putin as a murderous thug. And then that it looks like, the Trump administration will be prepared, unless Putin bows the knees, that the Trump folks are going to turn on the aid to Ukraine like nothing they've ever seen. I don't know how you do more than billions, but that's a whole nother question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think the Russians are reacting to all this?
They're already reacting, Larry. And I've been, few emails and messages with some of our contacts in Moscow. No illusions whatsoever. And there was an excellent interview that I quoted in my latest column, which probably will be out between Wednesday and Thursday, and will be probably will be republished in the U.S.
And that's appearing at the Cradle, right?
No, this one will appear on Strategic Culture.
Okay, Strategic Culture.
I finished it this morning, a few hours ago. So I don't think Wednesday. Probably they'll publish on Thursday. Well, I quote Andrei Shusentsov. Andrei is one of the best, we can say relatively independent Russian analysts. He is the dean of MIGIMO, the School of International Relations. So that's really, really high up. And he's one of the program directors of the Valdai.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave an excellent interview to TASS, which I think was late last week. And he expressed more or less the consensus among diplomats, Valdai people, Russian Institute of International Affairs, etc., saying, look, whatever happens with the Trump administration, he wants to wind down the war in Ukraine because it's not cost effective, essentially. It's not because he has any special regards towards Russian interests. Number one point. So no illusions. Mm-hmm. And what he's going to offer to Russia, if he offers anything substantial, is not going to be exactly his ideas, because the deep state will interfere with everything. So, so well-informed people in Moscow, they know exactly what's going on in the US. And as you know, they follow millimetrically. And in the night and the nighttime geopolitical talk shows, they go into detail for 2 hours. That's the case. So there are no great expectations, to quote our friend Dickens. And they are very realist. And regarding what might be offered in terms of solving Ukraine, which won't solve anything, a ceasefire or whatever, all of them come back to the same point. The list of Russian conditions was spelled out by Putin as early as last June, mm-hmm. and then reiterated in many other interviews. The last time was at the Valdai Q&A. No nuclear Ukraine, neutral Ukraine, no Ukraine in NATO, discussion about essential indivisibility of security, which was the theme in late 2021. all the Russian assets confiscated, especially in Euroclear European banks, back to Russia. And finally, solving the NATO encroaching on Russian borders. You know, Larry, that none of this will be accepted by the deep state. No? We all know that. We all know that. So then let me return the question to you briefly. What would you think realistically that Trump could offer Putin?
Candidly, I don't think he can offer him. Well, let me change that. What would be smart to offer is come in and say, okay, look, we're going to lift sanctions. We're going to stop treating Russia as an enemy. We're going to lift sanctions so as a gesture, a goodwill gesture on our part to show that we're taking some initiative. But I doubt he'll do that. It would be helpful, I think, if he would come out and say, publicly state, look, Russia has more in common with us than we want to admit, and we have a foundation for working together, which we need to embrace. Right now in Syria, Russia, alongside the Syrian government, are battling radical Islamic extremists, genuine terrorists, the kind of terrorists that attacked us on 9/11. And therefore, we need to join forces with Russia in trying to defeat this threat of these Islamic extremists who look for a global caliphate and want to subject everybody to their particular brand of fascist ideology, or something along those lines. But I'm dreaming. I'm in a fantasy world. I don't think that's going to happen because he has, by virtue of putting these people around him, and particularly embracing someone like Gorka, who's just a buffoon.
Do you think that Gorka was imposed on Trump by some hidden interests?
No, I think Trump has liked him in the past. Maybe Trump's a sucker for the British accent. What do I know? But it is, Trump is still making decisions now. Trump always believes that he can control people. Go back to his first administration. I don't know if you remember the show. You probably were not watching The Apprentice. I know I didn't, but there was this one black woman by the name of Omarosa who was, she was sort of a pain in the neck on the show, and she got fired. And who does Trump bring into his first administration? Omarosa.
Wow.
And she then goes like off the rails and then writes this tell-all book, crapping all over Donald Trump. And it's like, he thinks he can finesse people and, get them under his control. So I think that what we're looking at is a situation where the events in Russia have changed to such an extent, and the Russian view about how they view the relationship with the world, with the United States, has changed so dramatically that Trump and company don't realize it. It's just like that person you and I were talking about before that tried to, extort money. That when we first met that person, it was like, oh wow, this is really a remarkable individual, and
exactly,
and then once the veil comes off, and you go, guy's a criminal. I think Russia's undergone that same sort of thing with the United States now.
Absolutely, and you see it the way ultra capable diplomats like Lavrov and Ryabkov. We met him together.
Right.
So Ryabkov, now he's totally lost his patience. I'm dealing with a bunch of idiots, and I have to name them as idiots. And this is one of the best diplomats on the planet, And so now they're being realist. They know they're dealing with a bunch of lunatics, not to mention the Europeans. This Dutch armchair admiral that said we need to start thinking about preemptive attacks against Russia. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
And now but the crazy thing is, I would recommend everyone in fact, I've been doing this for a while, spend 3 or 4 days in Brussels. Go to the European Commission, go to the European Union, and go to NATO headquarters. That's all you need to understand how it works. So then you see the symbiosis between a guy like this Admiral Bauer and
Rob Bauer.
exactly, and Ursula von der Leyen and the new Estonian batshit crazy chick, which is going to be responsible for the EU's foreign policy. She'll be representing nearly 500 million people, Larry.
Yeah.
And you cannot find anybody with competence enough to be a diplomat.
Yeah, that's what's
yes, go ahead, please.
No, I just said that's what's remarkable, that Europe used to be stereotyped as this land of the diplomats that invented diplomacy, so almost. And now to abandon it with this clown show is about the best way to describe it.
It is. And for instance, when you see, that Dominique de Villepin, he has a sort of renaissance here in Paris. But he usually goes to alternative media, radio shows, etc. If he goes on one of the major shows, he destroys the interviewers because he used to be one of the best European diplomats of the past century. We can say. He was even respected by the neocons because they simply could not argue with him. And Villepin is one of the very few old school diplomats in Europe who's telling it like it is, not only in Ukraine, but in Gaza. The other day on radio, he spelled it like it is in Gaza, and people in France were horrified because you will never hear anybody of his standard saying that on the talk shows or on the front page of Le Monde, for that matter. Yeah. So that's it. There are only a few that remain. The Russian foreign ministry, the French foreign ministry today is beyond pathetic, just like the German foreign ministry or the British foreign ministry or the Italian foreign. Is the same?
Well, in fact, what we're seeing right now, the signals that are being sent by the EU and by the individual country, well, at least by France and Germany, along with what's coming out of the United States, when you're viewing it from the Russian perspective, the Russians are seeing that they're becoming more aggressive, more extreme, more intent upon a military confrontation. And it seems to me that the Russians have understood that message, and we're seeing now a significant shift in their strategy. Am I reading something into it that's not there?
It's absolutely correct. And for instance, in terms of solving the war in Ukraine, now they are Lavrov, I think practically every day is repeating, look, we have been stating our conditions for months now. It's all there. If you respect our position, we can sit on the same table and discuss. There's nobody to discuss with in the Atlanticist circle. Ryabkov is saying the same thing. The Minister of Foreign Relations as a whole is saying the same thing. They called the UK ambassador the other day to the foreign ministry in Moscow, explanations about one of those spies that they caught working for the British embassy in Moscow, etc. And the guy who was, in fact, he no answer to any questions from, and he treated the media like a thug. And this guy is supposed to be one of the best, one of the most qualified British ambassadors in the world. So there's no dialogue. Remember what Ryabkov told us, a year ago. There's no dialogue. And the Russians 1 year ago, they were appalled that they could not talk to their counterparts in Europe. Now they're just, why should we waste our time talking to these idiots? So it's to quote Annalena 360 degrees, it's 360 degree change.
Yeah, the math challenge, German.
To discuss as a diplomat with Baerbock? There's nothing to discuss. They are like those scarecrows in There's nothing to discuss. But that poses an enormous problem to Russia, because Russia now is only talking to the Global South.
Mhm.
They're talking to everybody in Eurasia. For instance, Putin, as we speak, Putin is arriving in Kazakhstan today, which is a very complicated situation for him to try to coordinate, because Kazakhstan has a lot of American investment,
Right.
suffers a lot of American pressure, but at the same time, Kazakhstan is a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasia Economic Union, and Belt and Road Initiative. So Kazakhstan is in the middle of everything that Russia and China are doing, but with lots of American pressure. But the last time I was there was a year ago, more or less, Larry, and it was incredibly complicated, because there are basically two clans clashing directly. The old Nazarbayev clan, which is Atlanticist more or less, and Tokayev, he's very close to China. He speaks fluent Mandarin. He's also close with Russia. He has a very good relationship with Putin. And every Kazakh that you approach, even people that I knew before, say, can you explain the internal dynamics here? No, they'll say, no, it's too complicated. You won't understand. So they don't even understand how complicated it is,
Well, look, I mean, the one thing that I keep trying to educate people on to get them to understand. Russia, in terms of its views with the relations with the West, it's not predicated upon something that they want to get out of the West. It's not like, oh, the West has resources we need. Russia's got all the natural resources it needs. The West has technical expertise that we need. The education system in Russia is, surpasses anything in the West. But by contrast, the West is fixated upon trying to destroy Russia, because the West wants those resources. Even though the United States is resource rich, we're really not content to stay at home and mind our own damn business. And when I look at that, I really don't see a bridge, a way to connect the two. I think we're on a road, an inevitable road for war.
Look, essentially, I think we all of us independents, Larry, we all agree. I think we disagree only on how acute is the danger of a hot war in the next few months or so. There is a very, very strong possibility, of course, especially the next less than 2 months. These are extremely dangerous. The rest of this month, the whole month of December, and 3 weeks in January. That's a long.
Yeah.
Anything could derail. And the theme of strategic defeat. When you look at everything that these people, Atlanticists, both sides of the Atlantic, what they said these past few days after Oresnik, proves two things. One, that Plan A still is inflict a strategic defeat on Russia, as much as nowadays is beyond absurd, stratospherically absurd, right? And number two, they didn't get the message of Oresnik, and that's even, these people are theoretically professionals, and they did not get the message. This is even more mind-boggling as I see it. Russia just proved with one act that they can hit anybody they want, anywhere in the world, with speeds that are unfathomable for most people even to understand. 12,000 kilometers an hour. People don't know what that means. 3 kilometers a second. People don't know what that means. With kinetic force, no nuclear, so no radiation. They pick the target. They can call in advance and tell civilians, look, get away because there's going to be a hit. Whatever happens next, there will be a hit. And anything that is hit won't even know what hit it.
Right.
So this changes everything in terms of warfare, military science, you name it. And our best military specialists from America to Russia are over it now, trying to understand what that means and the repercussions of that. And these people still don't get the message.
Well, I think part of the problem is the Yuzhmash plant. It was not a great visual because the media was not able to go in and show what had actually happened.
Exactly. The SBU total censorship, no? Yeah.
So the West has just said, well, we saw a bunch of flashing lights, but nothing else, and it just left some holes in the ground. And didn't. Now, I did hear from a friend who said, no, the place it's completely gone. It's
completely gone. And witnesses, eyewitnesses who live in Dnipropetrovsk, they said that to Russian media.
Yeah. But so last night, the word came that Russia has issued a NOTAM, a notice to airmen, closing the airspace around the site where that Oresnik, the first Oresnik missile was launched.
Until Saturday, for the next few days.
Yeah. So sometime in the next 3 days, Russia's going to hit something.
Exactly.
Well, and they've got to, because at this point, based upon what Putin said last Thursday, where he said, "Look, if you keep launching those in, then we're going to respond immediately. If you throw your Storm Shadows, scalps at us, we'll retaliate immediately. But we're going to tell you where we're going to hit."
Exactly.
It'll be a military target, and you need to get your people. We'll give you enough warning to get your people out, because he's not interested in killing people. I mean, this is like a new type of weapon.
A new type of weapon, and proves that they didn't get the message. There were 2 attack MS against Kursk after Oresnik.
Yeah.
And this morning, I read this morning, I'm sure this is confirmed by now, the Minister of Defense is analyzing what happened, and there will be a response. So this is what's going to happen in the next few days until Saturday. We can count the response until Saturday.
Yeah, if we were sitting down with Rybkov again, the one thing I'd want to try to convey to him is I'm not sure the Russians appreciate that the United States political class does not take them seriously.
True.
They believe that Putin's a weak person, that he talks tough, but that he's bluffing, and that he would never do what he's done. And sometimes I wonder if the Russians actually appreciate or understand that.
I think they appreciate it, Larry, because this gives Putin even more of a margin of maneuver to come up with any response that is unforeseen and surprises. Oresnik was a surprise. I would love to learn the decision mechanism before the launch of Oresnik. Peskov did not explain. But Peskov said 2 things very important. Even Putin himself didn't know that Oresnik was ready for a test, number 1. And number 2, he said very, very few people were in a very, very small circle was aware that Oresnik was being developed and it was ready to go. So this proves to us that the vow of secrecy inside the Russian industrial military complex is quite something. It's very sophisticated. And not only that, Putin also said, this is not the only new system. There are others who are being tested. Can you imagine there are variants of Oresnik which can be even more lethal? It's possible.
Yeah.
And number 4, which was also very interesting, the Americans are saying, they have only one. It was a test, whatever. Putin said, no, we have a stockpile of Oresniks, and the order to start serial production has been given this week. And the guy responsible for the factory, I forgot the name of the factory, he said, yes, we're starting serial production right now.
Yeah.
So, it's 4 surprises in one.
Well, yeah, this, I don't think the average person still understands the import of this weapon. I've used the analogy of, if you go back to August of 1945. So on August 5th, 1945, people were used to American B-29 bombers flying overhead and dropping out conventional bombs, and the bombs that hit them, they'd cause a lot of damage over a particular area. So the next day, they see again the plane, and it's flying over Hiroshima, but it drops just one bomb. And that one bomb all of a sudden transforms, changes the nature of warfare because it's put something new out there. I think what happened last Thursday was just as important as that. But in a way, I would say it makes war a little easier from this standpoint. That to take out a plant like USMASH in the past, you'd have to use like a tactical nuclear weapon.
Tactical nuclear weapon.
Well, that tactical nuke is going to cause lots of collateral damage. It's going to kill civilians in the immediate area. It's going to leave radiation, but it could create a real problem with, a big dust cloud and, block the sun for a couple of days. This one has demonstrated the potential to destroy like a tactical nuke in terms of causing that destruction across that area with no radiation, no collateral damage to speak of. It's almost like a sniper rifle shooting a nuclear bullet.
I think we came up to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
I spent like 2 or 3 days. How could I define this in one sentence? And it's in fact, it's exactly what you just said.
Great minds think alike.
Absolutely. Our dinner's in St. Petersburg, So I came up with something with the destructive power of a nuclear weapon, but used like the precision bullet by a very good sniper.
Mm-hmm.
So that's in one. You can tell it one long sentence, but it's more or less what it is. And I think that's one of the reasons why they didn't get the message, because they simply cannot compare these two vectors and how these vectors intersect with one system, within one system.
Yeah, I think I don't know what this next target will be. I'm assuming that it will be inside Ukraine. It's that
inside Ukraine, sure.
That Russia's not ready to go into Romania or Poland yet, but maybe they'll hit the Rheinmetall factory that's out in western Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Taking that out, and this time using some explosives with these hypersonic warheads, because if people don't see the flash and the bang, they don't appreciate that. Oh, there was a real explosion there.
True, absolutely, absolutely. And the overall point that Russia is making, we don't need nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. We have other systems. We can do anything we want with something as destructive as a nuclear weapon.
Right. I mean, that is what caught my attention.
This is the real game changer.
Yeah.
Huh? In fact, yeah.
I described it as almost, watching that, hypersonic flash from the sky to the ground. It's like watching a directed energy weapon being fired by the, Battlestar Galactica or something.
Battlestar Galactica, wonderful.
But I mean, that's think of what would it would again transform warfare if to come up with a directed energy weapon that you can fire like a laser, and it can eliminate a particular area without the contamination, without the
contamination, and without radiation, especially. Yeah.
So,
and that's what extraordinary. Our friend Martianov, he said something that was very appropriate. The Americans only see what Russians have when they see it.
Mm-hmm.
They never know what's coming next. They didn't know anything about Sarmat, Zircon, King Zal, Avant-Garde, and now Oresnik. They didn't know anything before.
Right.
Only when it happened.
I would love to, have a day or two back inside the intelligence community to see, because there's sometimes you can find some good analysts that are sitting there and, culling through all the data, and they can at least say, boy, this appears to be a new system, or they'll have some information. But the fact that the policymakers are completely clueless about it doesn't surprise me at all.
Of course. Yeah. Same thing as the implications of losing Project Ukraine. None of them is capable of imagine what that means in terms of end of unilateral domination, because it's unilateral domination being humiliated on a battlefield in front of the whole planet. They cannot come to grips with that. It's too much for them.
Well, it seems like we're coming to, what Clausewitz called a culmination point.
Yes.
So the breakdown there is no unity of command inside Ukrainian's political leadership. Zelensky is behaving increasingly erratic and is losing support. The army doesn't have the manpower, and they're getting pushed back all across the front. And it seems that Russia's accelerating its advance in a way that we haven't seen. So that this, do you think that the Russians are trying to put an end to this before Trump takes office?
They only have
56 days.
7 weeks.
Yeah, 56 days. You've got 20 days in January, 31 days in December.
That's not 8 weeks. It's not enough. It's not enough because the front line is huge, and they still need to conquer the rest of Luhansk, but the rest of Donetsk, the rest of the republic. That will be a very tough battle. And then they stop. They would not want to. If they do it, they wouldn't stop. They will keep advancing.
Yeah.
And for instance, if they conquer Pokrovsk, let's say in the next 7-8 weeks, after Pokrovsk, there's nothing. It's just step. They can keep on going,
right,
as long as they want. So coming back to something that was very, very much on the forefront of the analysis last year, everybody was saying the only ones who know are Putin and Shoigu at the time, when Shoigu was at the Ministry of Defense. So nowadays we can say that the only one who actually knows is Putin.
Yeah.
And the phone call that he's going to make to the Minister of Defense, okay, stop now, or no phone call, keep going.
Well, what do you make of Shoigu today? He's in Iran, is he? Or is he?
No, he went to Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, that's right.
You saw it, nah? And this trip in itself is something. I wonder, but I haven't read what, for instance, Washington Post and New York Times wrote about it. Probably they are ashamed to write anything about it in depth. This, in practice, means the Russian establishment going to Kabul to talk to the Taliban, tell them, look, starting in December, January, you're not going to be regarded as a terrorist organization in Russia. The bill at the Duma was already introduced. It will be voted before the end of the year. So this means that in 2025, Afghanistan can enter as a full member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, if everybody agrees. And I'm sure all of them will agree, because this will stabilize Afghanistan. And investments, for the moment, Chinese investments all over. They are doing incredible infrastructure projects all over Afghanistan, including, Larry, the Chinese building a highway in the Wakhan corridor, 5,000 meter high, and the Chinese go there and they're building a highway just like that. Unbelievable. I traveled the Wakhan on the Tajikistan side. It's wow. You don't want to be lost there, And we were very, very lucky because my driver was a Tajik guy who studied mechanical engineering in Moscow. He spoke perfect Russian, and he was first-class mechanic, and I trusted him completely. And I told him, if we have something here, we die in 24 hours. He says, I know, and I have to know.
Yeah. Listen, the Tajik drivers. I had a Tajik taxi driver once.
You have an experience with that Tajik
God,
driver.
it was like
they're amazing. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, he was incredible. He was like a frustrated Formula One race car driver. I mean, we were doing 100 kilometers an hour down the main boulevard there in St. Petersburg, and then he'd be coming up and stopping within, inches, the centimeters of the car in front. I mean, it was like holy small, but very, very smart and entertaining.
You should see these guys driving a Jeep at 5,000 meter high. And it's not a road, it's a trail. So the Chinese are building a brand new highway under these conditions. And of course, they'll finish next year. And then there are dams everywhere, hydroelectric plants, So there is a boom, a construction boom, infrastructure boom in Afghanistan. And the Russians are going to come in as well. For the moment, it's only Chinese, a little bit of India in the southwest. They built a road from Iran to the Afghan border. And Afghanistan is going to be incorporated into this north-south transportation corridor, which is, to a certain extent, is a little bit the Indian Silk Road as well. Mm-hmm. Because the India and Iran trade is going to be much closer. And Afghanistan, a neighbor of Iran, will be part of it as well. Could you imagine something like this, Larry, 3 years ago when Afghanistan?
No.
Was 3 years ago? Was 2021 when
21, August 21.
Yeah. Three years ago when the Americans fled Afghanistan. Could you imagine that 3 years later we'll be in a situation like this? There you go.
But see, and that's the one thing, and I'll get you out of here with this, that the people here in my country, over in the United States, do not grasp how dramatically the world has changed now, that China and Russia have realized, we're not enemies, we're actually friends, and in working together, they are not working from the standpoint of colonialist conquerors.
Mm-hmm.
They are working from the standpoint of saying, you know what? We're going to be better off if we can bring everybody along with us and develop. And the West doesn't get that. That's what I think is this dramatic change that's taking place, and that the role of Russia and China in this is just critical.
Absolutely correct. And because, Larry, it's impossible for the political elites in the US to understand the integration of a supercontinent. It bypasses them completely. What we're watching is the integration of Eurasia, not only from east to west, but from north to south, and simultaneously, and operated essentially by big powers and civilization states like Russia, China, Iran, and India. This is something that, and I would say that even in South America, most people have trouble trying to understand the enormity of this. But if you discuss this, for instance, in Kazakhstan, in Astana, or if you discuss this in Istanbul, they say, it's absolutely normal. In the past, it used to be like that. We used to interact from east to west all the time. Even before Marco Polo. In fact, centuries before Marco Polo, this was already happening.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder that the Chinese called it at the beginning New Silk Roads. That's what it's New Silk and New Everything roads, interconnecting. It is well, I see it as the most important process of the 21st century, this integration. We should not be so pessimistic, believing that this is will be another century of forever wars. No, it won't, because they are trying to change the narrative and the factual, the facts on the ground everywhere, conditions of living for most people. So when the Chinese rhetorically say something about the community of a shared future, in practice, this is what we're seeing. from
Yeah.
Turkey to the Russian Far East and Southeast Asia, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia. Why all these Southeast Asians want to be part of BRICS? This is what they're thinking. Only 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand now are official BRICS partners.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to besmirch the memory of my mother-in-law, but I use the mother-in-law joke as a way that the West has conducted itself like the most vile, vicious mother-in-law you can imagine, always telling you what to do, always attacking, criticizing. I had a buddy in Argentina once, and in Argentina, they have these gas heaters that are attached to the wall. You turn them on and you light them.
Exactly.
He one day went in and was taking this siesta, taking a nap. She went in and turned on the gas. Didn't light it, just turned the gas on, tried to kill it.
Right?
So,
assassination attempt.
Yeah. So my point with this is the West has been like that evil mother-in-law. Always, we're going to sanction you. You do what you saw it the other day with the ICC where, they're talking, Lindsey Graham is going, we're going to sanction Canada and France. And, it's like, dude, go get a bottle of scotch and calm down.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this kind of overbearing dictatorial style. And that is, Russia and China are not giving off that vibe, even though the West wants to portray them as, authoritarian states. The one who's behaving like the authoritarian is us in the United States.
Absolutely. And everybody else is barbarians. No?
Yeah.
Africa, Latin Americans, the whole of Eurasia, they are barbarians, they are inferior, they are the other, and by definition, they are inferior.
Yeah, and that's one thing I picked up both by going to St. Petersburg and then also Moscow at the Mir conference this year. Russia shows genuine respect to these people.
Exactly. And in our conversations in South Africa, Larry, 2 weeks ago or so, everybody, the guys from Mali, from Senegal, all the South Africans, yes, we are treated with respect and we're treated like equals. That's why we welcome the Russians, and especially the Russians, also the Chinese, but especially the Russians.
Yeah, that's what we haven't learned that lesson here. All right, my friend.
Unfortunately, because the people I love the U.S. in terms of people to people's exchange, to quote Xi Jinping,
Yeah.
So, but not the political elites, of course.
Yeah. Well, brother, hey, listen, I thank you for your time today.
My pleasure, Larry. Always.
I miss. I learned so much from just sitting down and being able to chat with you. And
look, next we should meet in Moscow early next year.
I hope so, and we'll go to the Tchaikovsky Cafe again.
You bet.
All right, my friend. Thanks so much.
Take care, Larry. Take care.
Alrighty.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for watching this episode of Countercurrents. If you enjoyed it, hit the like and subscribe button and tell your friends about it. I'm Larry Johnson. Thanks for watching.